Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm going to actually start for the best interest of time, considering the notion that we have people from all over the globe, and I know everybody has so many things to run to. Uh, a shout out to my sister who's actually doing her run right now in the States. So with that being said, and with no further ado, I'm going to actually share my desktop in order to start our session. Share screen, and with this, I will start my session. Okay, so why the Ivory Tower? Why it really matters to actually break those boundaries of the Ivory Tower and whatnot. The agenda for today's session starts with some introductions, teaching and learning over the years. Then I will try to compare how do teachers versus researchers seem, why evidence-based practices are important, and where can we go from here, and how can we create the bridges that we all strive for. And I will conclude with a call for participation and questions and answers. To start off with me, I'm a learner first and foremost, 53 years and counting. Similar to everyone, we start first day after birth. We never stop learning. I'm a teacher, 32 years and counting. I'm a researcher, 22 years, and I'm still learning. I'm an administrator, 9 years and counting. A leader, well, I'm still working on it. And a proud mother, 32 years and counting. More about me, I'm really passionate about education. And by nature, I'm an optimist. I'm a believer in the power of social connections, and I do not like show-offy big terms. In the education field, we notice on many occasions, let's be honest, not just the education field, on many occasions, using bigger words tends to come off as, oh, I know more. I'm a strong believer that the more simpler you can pass the message, the more relevant and more important. I know the big words. I know phenomenological, but I don't like to say it. And more importantly, I really believe in the actual knowledge and passing it through simple and accessible terminology. I'm tired of the bureaucracy in the educational sector. It's on many occasions, it's just ending up holding us back. We on many occasions seem that we are fighting against the current when we want to achieve and move forward. And finally, I'm really interested in making a difference. I'm sure I share this with many of the attendees today and many of the people who will be listening to this video in the future. Today's webinar will start off as the first edubridges open session. It's an honest, not on it. It's an honest presentation with the aim of starting a dialogue. I'm going to highlight why bridges are needed. I'll provide an overview of what bridges can look like in the educational sector. And I will present some ideas about available resources. And finally, highlight ways passionate educators can get involved. Most importantly, today's webinar is a call for participation and collaboration. So please, please, please share your input in the chat area. They will definitely be taken into consideration. And as we move on, I will put the chat on my side to be able to see it. But considering that this is the first time I'm doing this online, can you please let me know if you see the chat space on my screen also? So there's the PowerPoint. Excellent, that's wonderful, because I do have it open and I don't want it to interject or interfere with what you're seeing. Thank you, Samir. So moving on, let's start with a look back. When we look at school classes over the years, this is one of the oldest. Fast forward, this was in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I picked this picture from the 80s. Moving forward, we can see there is some change in the dynamic of the classroom. It's used more with the notion that it's group work. Further, 2008, this is where the math time, so on and so forth. With technology integration and whatnot, things became more with an iPad. And finally, with COVID, we have our masks on and we're moving on. If we look at university classes over the years, we'll see a very similar transition. The black and white, the more colorful setting, technology incorporated, and then finally, with the COVID times, technology and masks go hand in hand. Now, the voices for calling for change in educational settings have been going for quite some time. One of the most relevant was our schools are, in a sense, factories in which the raw products, children, are to be shaped and fashioned into products to meet the various demands of life. Now, with this in particular, one would think that this is noted yesterday because we're still talking about changing this. However, this was noted by Elwood Chubberley, Dean of Education at Stanford, in 1905. If we move on, there are calls for student-centered learning. Effective teaching and learning is student autonomy and initiative accepted and encouraged. It's when teachers ask open-ended questions and allow wait time for responses. It is so on and so forth. And again, we notice this is not new information. This is John Dewey about constructivist pedagogy back in 1916. Now, since then, since 1905 and 1916, moving now, has there been some real change? Unfortunately, not that much. We still have the cells and bells mindset still prevailing. The school day is structured around truncated periods of time. The university programs are still truncated around courses with hours and time allocated for each. We still have academic progress emulating an assembly line. There's still a lot of focus on fragmented curriculum rather than interdisciplinarity. The focus is still mainly on covering content, with standardization coming very highly in the more recent years. Teacher-led with some student-centered practices. And the biggest issue is the technology hype, which is believed on many occasions to be the magic bullet, and it is used for marketing by many school settings, school zones, school principals, owners, and whatnot. The bottom line, schools and universities are not really that different. What's happening in the school is also happening in the university, and what's happening in the university is still happening in the school. Different varying levels, but not that different. Moving on, I'm going to bring forth how are teachers and researchers different. I'm going to start off with what is perceived on many occasions by the community. Do you know those memes which say what our friends think we do and what I think I do, so on and so forth? So, what do you think our friends think we do? For school teachers, most of the time, the belief is we're in control. None of the students do anything before raising their hand, taking our permission, and being given the permission to actually work and respond. With that, on the other hand, we have the researchers whose friends believe that in social sciences, as researchers, we're thought to be just reading and reflecting and nothing more. If we go to the society and what they think about we do, when it comes to researchers, many believe that we might actually be working with the brain, and they think we're there to just force our students to follow. As for our moms, I think we both share the notion that our moms believe we're Einstein. And as for what we think we do, or I think we do, you can take your pick. It's Robin Williams, either in the Dead Poets Society or in the other movie that he's known for. Now, all jokes aside, there are so many buzzwords that we face in our academic settings, which have an impact on what we are doing. Originally, there was talk about education, school, book, graduation, but with time and with advancement, we started hearing newer terminology, innovative education, inventions, teamwork, vision, success, innovation, and the like. And fast forward, there's nothing better than the whole plethora of terminology coming from instructional design and educational technology. So with that in mind, the biggest problem comes, at least in my opinion, I'm not sure if you share that with me, but one of the biggest and toughest set of terminologies lately come from the quality assurance, certification, consultants, KPIs, standards, so on and so forth. And unfortunately, parallel to all of this, and while this is a meme and might be considered as an old joke that has been roaming around the internet, there is something really to be said about the perception towards teachers, the perception towards academic, and the perception towards the profession as a whole. I do not think there is any country that doesn't suffer from this. I'd really like to hear from you about how the education profession is perceived where you are. If you don't mind, I'll give a couple of minutes for your contributions through the chat area, if you don't mind. So anybody would like to share what the perception about the education profession in their country is more recently? Oops, sorry. So there's pitching of educational technology models to different grade levels, and this is by Angela in response for Ammar. How about the audience? Anybody would like to share some input regarding how education is perceived in your country? I know as a dean in the College of Education for the past 7 years, our biggest challenge was actually finding the motivation with the newer generation to come and join the profession, because after all, everything they are hearing is with regards to the negative perception rather than the positive. Agreed, Samir, there's a lot of change in how parents are providing and preparing their students or their children to perceive the teachers. So with this, the real question is, we are seeing similar issues and concerns. I know as a dean in the university, my faculty members were really struggling with the notion of inflated grades, with the notion of students believing that they are entitled to more than one opportunity and chance, so on and so forth. We face similar problems and they are not that different. And here, when I'm talking about teachers and researchers, I'm considering the researchers to be mostly in the university setting, but bottom line, teachers are researchers by nature. They are working on research day in, day out as they are doing their and performing their tasks. An eye-opening experience for me was in 2019, I went with a delegation from the College of Education at Zayed University to AACTE's Leadership Academy. We were 92 deans, chairs, assistant chairs, and assistant deans who joined for a whole week of training with regards to educational leadership. And the interesting thing is, first activity we were asked to do was to list our challenges and what we are facing back, each in their own college, each in their own university. And then it was placed around the hall with a gallery walk. The interesting thing is that the 92 leaders and administrators had so much similar issues and problems. There was the budget issue, student numbers, students' expectations. There was an overfocus on data analytics instead of real learning. I think this is a big issue when it comes to the benefits of technology. It allows us to really be able to capture all the data, but at the same time, what's the data we're capturing and what can we benefit from it and why use it? So there's something to be said about that. Everyone is working in a unit focus rather than a holistic approach. A bigger focus on competitive and collaborative institutional culture, and finally, the feeling of isolation and being misunderstood. So, since we are all in the same boat together, we are facing the same problems, why are we still consistently committed to the silo mentality? And when I'm talking about the silo mentality, I believe it goes beyond just the work of units. It's even with the notion of finding our resources, connecting, and the well-being that we are dealing with. To advance the field, I really believe that research needs to inform and guide practice. And this is not just what I believe, this is what research says. Practice needs to inform and guide research because it's a two-way street. We can continue working on research that doesn't benefit the field, but that will be definitely a loss of effort, time, money, and brain cells. Leaders and administrators need to empower practitioners and researchers. We cannot continue being placed in straitjackets and being asked to empower our students. Teachers cannot empower students if they are not empowered. Researchers cannot conduct high quality research if they are not empowered. So these are definite things that we need to think about. Everyone needs to acknowledge what the other stakeholder is bringing. And when it comes to evidence-based practices, the term was first used in the medical field in 1992. And it entails preparing management protocols for patient treatments based on complex processes. So it's not just saying evidence-based practice and that's it. It has to do with actually checking what does the evidence say and then implementing it. It requires ongoing updates on the side of the practitioner with checks and balances, such as board certification. The reason there, I cannot say I'm implementing evidence-based practices if I'm not staying up to date with evidence-based products or with the evidence itself. So there's a whole big cycle in the medical field for that in particular. After 1992, the topic and the term moved to other social science areas. Specifically in education, evidence-based practices and best practices became common terms. But the real question is, are we really implementing evidence-based practices? Or is it just another hype? What do you think? Do you believe that we are really implementing evidence-based practices in our schools and colleges and universities? Renda says no. Somehow, Samir. Thank you for the contribution. Not always, Suzanne. Angela, somewhat. Hatem, I don't think so. Sanjira, rare. No, it's not in its truest sense. So anyway, you've all touched base on it. It's not in its truest sense. Now, at the present time, the COVID had come to give us certain examples of how to further prove that we care a lot about our health, and we're not willing to actually take any treatment without making sure that it is evidence-based, isn't it? That's what anti-vax is all about. People are arguing, why would I want to take a vaccine if if the evidence is not that supportive? Unfortunately, that's not the case in the education field, where because the impact of our practices take a long time to show, because we are using terminology that is more fluent, and for multiple other reasons, we trust evidence-based term without really following with what it is really doing. Questions to think of as we think about evidence-based practices in education. How much access do practitioners have to research papers? Okay. When I compare the medical field and the education field, I would actually argue that the education field is as important as the medical field. It's the product that comes out of the education field and the education sector that prepares the doctors of the future. So the reality is, professors and doctors who are in the medical field, they have access to research papers. Our practitioners in the education field, they do not have that. It's neither the access to the journals at the school setting, nor the access to the language that is being used in there. How much time do practitioners have to read research? What's the average? If any of the attendees are teachers, can you please tell me in the school how much is your workload per week? $20 hours, 24, 28? How many hours of teaching do you have? 20 to 24, that's the general. I know in certain occasions, there's the 30. Public schools, 22 to and onwards. Considering that the teacher is going to be preparing for this, doing the actual teaching, and then the correction and the grading and keeping up with everything else, not to mention that usually teachers have their own lives, which on many occasions doesn't seem so. The reality, they don't have the time to read research. If we move further, how much support do teachers have to attend research conferences and learn about those updates? Is there anyone in the attendees who is in a school who has, by virtue of policy and procedure in the school, one conference per year to go to? I'm almost positive it's not the case. Unfortunately not. I would be shocked if there's any school that commits to sending their teachers once per year to a conference. So again, we're asking for something that we're not providing resources for. Samir is mentioning, unless it's personal development, I know that the majority of passionate teachers end up paying out of pocket for their own professional development. And eventually, sometimes they even end up paying to help in working the environment in the classroom itself. How much dialogue do we have between the researchers and the practitioners? There are education events and conferences that target research or target dialogue, but what happens is university faculty members are in their own tower. That's the Ivory Tower. Teachers and school practitioners are in the trenches trying to make things work. And fortunately, with the time of technology and COVID, there was a big push towards that online global collaboration on that front. What research or experience, for that matter, informs decision-making processes in education? This is a meme that I first saw somewhere like 20 years ago. And it was quite an eye-opener that never changed. My eyes are still open with the notion this has not changed. Examples from real life. Technology initiatives such as laptops and tablets. How many of you have been involved or have been told to introduce technology in your classroom, regardless of whether it is helpful or not, regardless of what's the evidence, regardless of whether it works in the classroom? I remember my team and I completed a review about government-led initiatives for tablets across the globe, which means we were supposed to review how many countries started a tablet initiative where they shared massive numbers of tablets to their school settings. And the real question was, how many of them actually made use of a theoretical framework to implement and utilize? This was done in 2015, right after the tablet became the big buzz and the big hype. A review of 63 countries around the globe found 11 countries, and only one of them had some reference to a theory behind putting that into implementation. So it's happening and it continues to happen. The Gardner's multiple intelligences theory. How many times do we go to training or sit with teachers or sit with sometimes even university professors, maybe not in the education sector, maybe outside, and they talk about, oh, multiple intelligences. That's something very important, and that's why we need to actually learn about multiple intelligences. Well, guess what? There's not a single research evidence that says Gardner's multiple intelligences theory is actually functional, effective, or helpful. But it's a hype word, we make use of it, and we continue. Ammar, yes, even he said that. Even he's trying to get out of it. And as Angela said, don't even mention learning styles. But can I blame the teachers? How can I can't blame teachers, I can't blame educators, and I can't blame even school principals, because the opportunities for this dialogue and this discussion is not there. And we need to actually move on with that. Flipped classroom. It's amazing. Okay, very nice, amazing. The moment that flipped classroom came out, I was observing different schools and different school settings where the teacher would take pride in the notion, I'm using flipped classroom. And the only flipped part of it is that he's asking them to watch a video at home, but everything else in the class is exactly the same lecture-based aspect. So the reality is we are not informed properly about evidence-based practices. In a perfect world, the research will be informing and guiding practice and vice versa. In a perfect world, leaders and administrators would be empowering teachers and practitioners and researchers. And in a perfect world, everyone would acknowledge everybody else's input. However, unfortunately, we are not in a perfect world. Even the COVID awakening has dulled down. How many of you were optimistic at the start of COVID that, oh, now they will notice how important we are in this world? Even doctors and nurses, where everyone was clapping on a daily basis, unfortunately, we go back to business as usual. And in research, we do call this regression to the mean. This is just normal. We cannot continue with the special cases. We always regress to the average, to the mean. And we can continue waiting, or we can actually start participating in shaping our own future and our new normal. Since 1905, 1916, nothing has changed. Now, it's easier said than done, I agree. But we are in the days of social media. We're in the days of online learning platforms. And we are in the days where a quick search around social media spaces, you can see how much individuals are doing with no knowledge at all. I'm going to say it as it is. How many do we find online who are talking about advice, giving what should be done, telling everyone what needs to happen without the knowledge that supports that? Wikipedia, it's the perfect proof of power of the masses. I know that in education and when we are teaching, everybody says, oh, Wikipedia is not a serious reference and you're not supposed to use it. Well, guess what? Let's be honest and let's call things by what they are. Wikipedia is more peer-reviewed than some of the journals that are being considered Q1 and Q2. We need to understand that. We need to keep in mind that we are at a time where anybody who can write a paper, go online and pay for the publication, they can actually get it out there and claim that they have contributed to the literature. It's a shame, but it is the reality. And that's why Wikipedia might be even better on certain occasions. Khan Academy is another example of how a small project can have and morph into something much bigger. The most relevant case in point is the coronavirus time. As an educational technologist myself, I never thought I will ever witness a time when all teachers around the globe will actually use technology and will help each other. Now, mind you, the COVID times, we only succeeded in the transition from face-to-face to distance remote learning because of the efforts of the people on the ground, because of everyone who was working and running the show day in, day out, and because of the WhatsApp groups that people were asking their friends from across the globe about. So with all this, where to from here? This is where, having been through the long journey I've been, and having seen what the research has to offer, having seen and been in the trenches, I decided to start edubridges. I'm going to briefly walk you through the platform just to give you a sense of what are the types of bridges that we're working on, and to call upon each and every one of you to get involved with us, because I really believe we can make a difference moving forward. So with edubridges, we are building bridges through research dissemination. Through the website, you will find that we have the research summaries. The biggest problem we have in the education sector is that the research is of different quality. Some is good, some is bad. It comes in all shapes and forms. At the same time, it is with language that the practitioner might not always understand. So what I have decided to do in this is invest in taking high-level research articles from strong journals and systematic reviews and meta-analyses. That is the higher level of research, and we'll have other sessions to discuss those. And the idea is to develop and summarize the article in a clear, structured format that allows the reader to understand regardless of their background in research. Our problem in the social sciences is the fact that our abstracts are not that structured. We use 10 different terms to describe one item or one thing, and so on and so forth. So the objective of the research summaries will be to provide an overview of the research articles, but most importantly is to summarize the implications for the actual practitioners in the field. What's more important is this will also be available in Arabic. This is a huge undertaking that we will be working on, and to reach as much as possible. It's a summary in easy terminology, and for anybody who's interested, you can press on the link, go to the article. If you have access through your institution, you can read it. If not, you can check different options. But that's one of the ways that we are trying to disseminate knowledge rather than just webinars and panels. At the present time, there are two, and the plan is we'll be releasing one every week to make it sustainable. How can you be involved? You can make use of the information, okay? You can share the information. You can recommend important research to be highlighted. So in your own field, if you are familiar with a classic article that really needs to be available for others, please do let us know. And if you are a researcher, please feel free to highlight your own research through providing us with summaries. The summaries that you will send, so if you're interested, contact us. We'll provide you with a template. You can complete the summary and share with us. It will go through peer-reviewed in order to just decide the rigor and consistency. And that way you will also be promoting your own research for higher referencing, for higher citations, so on and so forth, and for a higher impact in the field. Now, another way that we are building bridges is through communities of practice. Research has consistently highlighted that communities of practice are effective in empowering individuals. Talk about the isolation we mentioned before. It's through the community that I can feel I'm not alone. And that being said, edubridges has linked up and hooked up with Circle Community. It's a platform that is receiving a lot of attention lately. And it is a very user-friendly and welcoming space. At the present time, it works with spaces, and it's very similar to all the social media spaces that we have. But the main objective over here is to get individuals connected with each other. To build bridges, there'll be a space where you can discuss the teaching and learning issues or items, another one for leadership and administration, a third one for educational research. We'll also have the community reflection space and a community question and answer. So in reality, you can contribute to other people's questions and you can also benefit. You are more than welcome to invite as many people as you are aware who would be passionate and would be willing to invest in this and learn more. How you can get involved? Join the community and share your knowledge and expertise. You can actively connect with others in the field. You can make use of resources to be provided through the community, and you can invite interested colleagues and graduate students. Finally, you can also recommend topics and suggestions for spaces for contributing to the spaces, because at the present time, I think they are maybe 8 spaces, but we will be building more spaces over there. In addition, we have academic webinars as usual with every other space. I promise you, this is the only webinar that I'll be on my own with. I'm going to say it with a marketing pitch, but beyond this, it will be more focused on a particular topic or a particular issue with other specialists or practitioners in the field. You can get involved by attending and inviting others for sure, by recommending topics of relevance to current issues that you may want to present about or attend sessions on. So if you are interested in joining us in a panel where you are a panel member, or if you are interested in offering just a panel on your own training, we have the platform, and I would really welcome your contributions and suggestions. And you can also recommend panel members through your network. Another thing, the professional development. This is the teacher training modules as a first piece of professional development that we're offering. This comes as an outcome of a research project that we've been working on for quite some time at Zayed University previously. And here I'd like to give a big shout out to Dr. Jenny Eppard, who was managing the development of the training modules. At the present time, the modules were designed and developed in line with teacher licensure standards, both UAE regional and international, like CAPE. They target training, and they offer the training for the standards. At the present time, you will find 7 modules that have already been listed and are live. For each module, you will see the learning outcomes. There'll be a unit video specifically designed for the purpose. You'll have access to free reading materials and a brief assessment piece. And the more beneficial piece of this whole process is we've also invested in preparing this totally in Arabic. It is not dubbed. It is actually designed totally in Arabic. So we have 29 different modules that are ready, but we will not be posting them directly all together. We will be sharing them as we move forward. You'll have the same thing over there. And how can you get involved? You can make use of the 7 modules already available and stay tuned for the remaining 22. Please note, these resources are research funded and they make use of open source material. So they are totally free. There's no funding that will ever, no charges that will ever be incurred on them. This is research for the purpose of teacher empowerment and education progress. Please make use of them, share the information, and follow us. You can share with colleagues. You can use them for your own professional development, or you can also use them if you're a principal or a head of department. You can actually make use of them as training material for your team members. The modules allow for reflective practice. They allow for scenario-based activities, so on and so forth. And if you are a professor at the university and you prepare teachers for the future, you can also make use of them for your own students. Finally, please feel free to contact us. We would like to discuss with you how, if you are using them, how you can have and how you can actually use them for research purposes in different contexts, and we'll help you with designing the research and the publication and so on and so forth. Again, before I move, I want to also say a big thank you to the huge number of faculty members and instructors and designers who have worked with us on these modules. Please make sure to check them in the actual thank you and acknowledgement on the website. More to come with regards to professional development. We're going to be offering training programs with the notion of a mentorship approach. These will be offered by our collaborators who are specialists in their own field. The online workshops will be, other than the programs, there'll be online workshops offered by community members with a for us, by us approach. The reason for these two, the training programs will be offered by specialists who really know what they are doing. So for example, SPSS training. We're always struggling at the university looking for somebody to offer SPSS training. We're going to be providing that. We'll be providing research design. I know some individuals might be very interested in upping their game with their early childhood education center, making it more student-centered and more standard-based. We'll be presenting training in that front. The online workshops offered by the community members. I was a teacher, and I know that I had a lot of nice ideas, a lot of skills, a lot of expertise, but I never had the opportunity to share beyond my space. And at the same time, I know other teachers who I would have loved to attend their training. What I'm calling for in this is, if you are interested, or any of your fellow colleagues or network is really good at a particular technology, technique, strategy, please contact us. We will be reviewing proposals for workshop offerings, and these we will negotiate and discuss with you how and when we can offer them. But that's another way of building bridges. And the most important piece of this is that it's not going to be focused on certificates and accredited certificates. And the real focus is empowering the practitioners and the researchers and the educators. So it will be more focused on the actual learning. Now, with that, you can get involved by recommending topics, contacting us for potential proposals and trainings, and I'll be sending out a survey for you to fill out with this in mind. Another way we are building bridges is through practitioners' spotlight. I was a teacher, and again, I was an administrator and somebody who's been very close in the field, seeing how many amazing, passionate practitioners are doing wonderful things, but unfortunately nobody hears about it. Or somebody starts as a teacher and then starts their own entrepreneurial project. There's a success story. Unfortunately, we hear more in schools and universities about the squeaky wheel. We don't hear about the success stories. And the edubridges spotlight will focus on celebrating the success stories. And with that in mind, I ask you, please watch them as they start showing off. The first one will be next Friday, and every Friday there will be a release. I'll be looking for individuals to share and celebrate. If you have something you'd like to showcase through a spotlight, please contact us. And if you have somebody that you would like to recommend, also contact us. You can use them with teacher education courses, and you can have them starting a motivational or a discussion material. Educational consultancy, that's definitely part of the piece as it is. Now, I'm getting close to the point where I'm going to wrap up, but open the chance for questions and answers. First off, I want to give a big, big thank you for my team members who have really made this possible. Mr. Osama Nasser, he is the brilliant web designer behind our space. Thank you, Osama. We couldn't have done this without you. Ms. Rana Farouk is our admin, who anybody who's going to be working with us, collaborating with us, or connecting with us, you'll have to meet her and you'll know how awesome she is and how amazing she is. Ms. Khulud Al-Janahi, our amazing social media guru who is helping us promote ourselves and connecting us with people in the field. Ms. Anastasia Krasnova, she's the one who is the designer behind all of the feel and vibe. Ms. Simran Vidvayas and Ms. Rima Hajjar are currently working on the summaries for the research. And finally, I have Ms. Rand Habbal, who's my daughter. I'm the proud mama. She's the graphic designer who came up with the logo and who's the push behind me with regards to the design. Finally, many, many unknown soldiers, you know yourselves, thanks a lot for your help. I'm going to open up for questions and answers. I know that the time allocated so far is not long, but I'd like to really take your questions and answers if possible. And I'm willing to give you the mic if anybody wants to chat. Please raise your hand if you have a question that I'm going to open the Q&A. Do you think the idea of sending university professors to teach one class in P12 settings each 5 years is a way to bridge research to practice? This is a question by Dr. Norma. A great idea. I think this is extremely nice. It will work both ways because it will allow the researcher and the professor to stay in touch with the field, and it will also allow the individuals in the school to see them live in action and to learn from their skills and expertise. The other one, how do you envision edubridges will bridge research into practice through its offerings to the education community? I think, thank you, Norma, for this. I think this was answered through the presentation. School leaders constitute challenges regarding bridging research to practice. This is an amazing question, Dr. Norma. I think I'm not going to say school leaders, I'm going to say many of the administrators and policymakers are part of the problem. And that's why we need to work together. And maybe when we have, like, for example, a teacher who goes to the principal and says, I want to do this rather than this, by empowering her with research understanding and with research findings, she can better present and argue for the position. So yes, I'm hopeful we can help with that. How can you organize your time doing many valuable things? Samir, I think we all have multiple things that we're dealing with. On my side, I can say I'm just blessed with amazing team members, friends, and a wonderful network that we can bring all this together. Again, that's why the real shout outs are not for me. It's for the team members. Ammar, is there any way to further link schools with researchers in the region for collaborative practice? Ammar, I really like your question because this is one of the things we need to think about. There are different ways. One could be, for example, having a cafe. This is where the English and French are getting mixed up. A cafe or a coffee space, a get-together, where we can have chats and discussions. That would be informal. We might want to have a conference style online where it's not presented by the researchers. With all due respect, I'm a faculty professor. I'm not the know-it-how. I know something, but the teachers in the school know more, and I cannot help them if I don't know what they are struggling with. So I hope I answered your questions. I'll take this as a last question before I close. Are you planning to tackle country-specific or language-specific issues? For example, the poor state of Arabic teaching in many countries of the world. May, this is a key thing that we want to target and tackle, and that's why we have made sure that the training modules are in English and Arabic. The summaries will be available in English and Arabic. And a third thing, the platform for the collaborative space, the community, it is Arabic enabled. So we might end up creating, I wanted to create a space for Arabic teachers, but at the same time, I didn't want to feel or give the impression that I'm giving them, I'm putting them on the side. We will have a discussion. If you don't mind, join the community. We'll talk about how we can manage that. And I would love to start a real initiative to support the Arabic teachers as much as possible. Thanks a lot. The last two slides, as we finish, I do hope I didn't bore you to death. I encourage you to join our community and actively contribute to shaping how it meets your needs. I will be going through all the comments and messages, and I will be posting feedback through the community. I would like you to stay tuned for our announcements, and please complete the survey once you leave the meeting now. There's a survey where I'm asking about very brief things, areas that you would like to learn more about and you'd like us to contribute to through the training, areas that you would like to participate in, and preferences with when the timing for the meetings should be best. And finally, it's only the beginning, but it's a great day to start something big. Together, we can really make a difference. And I really, really thank you for your time, effort, and I look forward to a great collaboration together. Thanks a lot, everyone.